Nice to meet you, I'm Ray. I'm seriously dating Ken.
Excuse me? It makes no sense that Ken would boldly bring his affair partner, and it's unbelievable that the affair partner would introduce herself. Unable to accept reality, Ken, grinning, handed me a completed divorce form. This woman, she's pregnant. So I'm divorcing you. Younger women are obviously better. What? Young, how old is Ray?
Oh, I'm 20.
Hearing Ray's age made me dizzy. My daughter Julia is 17 years old. Ken is crazy, having an affair with a woman barely older than our daughter, and now expecting a child. I can't understand why this is happening. I feel like I'm crumbling from the ground up.
Our marriage was already broken. There's no need for me to pay alimony or child support.
Okay, I get it. Fine. I'll just take my daughter and leave. Do whatever you want.
What? Wait. Take the son too. With a new baby on the way, having your kids around would just be a nuisance.
I just shook my head in disgust at my yelling husband. Impossible. Because that child. Hearing my words, my husband Ken and his affair partner Ray became half-crazed. My name is Taylor. I have been working at a small local cleaning company for many years. I have been married to Ken for 20 years. Realizing that I have spent about half of my 43 years of life with Ken gives me deep feelings. I want to encourage myself for having walked this long journey of 20 years with him without divorcing. While I worked, I always raised our 2 children, but Ken did not. Ken has always been domineering, looking down on women, and never lifted a finger to help with household chores or childcare. It was really tough when the kids were still young. Holding a crying child at night, sleep-deprived and barely conscious, Ken, disturbed in his sleep, would make snide remarks to me. The kid cries at night because you must be making him anxious. It's because you're such a failure as a mother that the kid cries. You're the reason I can't get any sleep. Every single day, give me a break. I'm sorry. I was not getting enough sleep and was struggling with my first experience of parenting, which crushed my self-esteem. Facing Ken's reprimands head-on, I was terribly depressed in my younger days and would cry alone, believing I shouldn't cry in front of the children. Countless were the nights I hugged my sleeping child, holding back sobs. Yet, I still wanted to cherish the form of family. I thought it was for the children's sake, and I never doubted that it led to my happiness. To stay as a family with Ken, I would report on the children's activities, but Ken's reactions were always poor. Today, they raised their hands and answered questions correctly. They were talking with the teacher, making lots of friends and seemed to be having fun every day at school. Ugh, I'm tired. Don't talk to me about irrelevant stuff. Even when I share episodes that show our children's growth, Ken always dismisses them as irrelevant to him. I always wonder why, as these are his own children, but every time Ken ignores me, it hurts. Despite these feelings, the children I've diligently raised are growing up well. Our eldest daughter, Julia, is a 17-year-old high school student. She always acts swiftly, and whenever I ask for something, she moves quickly to help. Even when I'm busy with work, Julia helps with preparing dinner, truly a great support. She's a reliable person just like me, and I've rarely had troubles because of her. I am always grateful to have such a responsible daughter. The challenge is with David, our 14-year-old son, who is deep in his rebellious phase. Whenever I take my eyes off him for a moment, David acts as if he's become a character from an animation, wreaking havoc. He destroys things in his room and punches holes in the walls. While I marvel at how different a girl and a boy can be, I've always tried to nurture their individual personalities, but David has really caused a lot of trouble. I vividly remember an incident from when the children were in elementary school, where David stole Julia's Christmas gift money. David bought video games and model kits with the money he stole from Julia, and when he realized he couldn't deny it, he defiantly admitted it. Yeah, I bought this with the money I stole from my sister's Christmas gift money. I wanted it, so it can't be helped. I asked her for money, but she didn't give it to me, so it's her fault. Just because you want something doesn't mean you can steal money. What you're doing is stealing. We might forgive you because you're family, but if you did this to someone else, you'd be arrested by the police. I only took from my sister. You should know that much. That's not the point. Apologize to your sister. Can't you see she's crying?
No way. My sister is beneath me. Men are superior to women.
David's mocking laugh overlapped with the way Ken would mock me. His authoritarian demeanor, believing he's always right, that cold look in his eyes. It horrified me that this child might grow up to be an adult like Ken. One night. Since the cleaning company I work for is small, it's a tradition to celebrate the boss's birthday grandly with all employees. After celebrating the boss's birthday at a pub, I came home to find Ken waiting for me with crossed arms and a foul mood. It was immediately clear from his expression that he was in a very bad mood. The kids were also home late that day. Julia was at her part-time job, and David was at his tutoring classes. Ken had said he would be home late too, so he had told me he wouldn't need dinner. So, I focused on the boss's birthday party and had a great time with everyone. Yet, Ken slammed the table in anger. What do you mean coming home this late? It was the boss's birthday party. I told you about it before, right? You said you'd be home late and didn't need dinner, didn't you?
A good wife would wait and prepare dinner for her husband regardless.
I couldn't understand what Ken was saying. Despite saying he didn't want dinner, why was he demanding it now? Even when his contradiction was pointed out, far from reflecting, he just hardened his stance even more. As I stood there dumbfounded and unable to respond, Ken continued his tirade.
You really are a terrible wife. How many years have we been married now? I'm sick of your lack of perception. You're probably having an affair with the boss, aren't you? Why else would an employee celebrate the boss's birthday?
What are you talking about now? We have the boss's birthday party every year.
Oh, shut up. I get it, you're cheating. Since you have a lover who's a president, you wouldn't care about me. Seriously disgusting.
Ken stormed off into his room without listening to a word I said, leaving me with his frustrated expression. 3 days later, I faced a shocking scene. Ken brought a woman home.
Nice to meet you, M. Ray. I'm seriously dating Ken.
What? I couldn't understand why Ken would bring his affair partner home so brazenly, and her introducing herself was just unbelievable. I was so bewildered that I went blank for a moment, unable to grasp what was happening. Unable to accept the reality, Ken then smugly handed me a completed divorce form. This girl is pregnant. So, I'm divorcing you. Younger women are obviously better. What? Young? How old is Ray?
I'm 20.
Hearing Ray's age made my head spin. My daughter Julia is 17. Ken was cheating with a woman barely older than his own daughter and even made her pregnant. He's out of his mind. Her words echoed in my head, making me feel like the world was spinning. I couldn't understand how this could be happening, feeling like the ground was crumbling beneath me. Then, with a cloying tone, she added insult to injury. Please divorce him, ma'am. Ken would be happier with me. You cheated first. Even if I find a woman, you have no right to complain. With his arm around Ray's shoulder, Ken spoke smugly. It dawned on me that his recent unfounded accusations about my relationship with the president were all part of this farce. Ken was trying to justify his own infidelity by labeling me as the cheater.
Our marriage was already over. No need for me to pay alimony or child support. After all, you've been freely cheating with the president too.
Fine, I get it, enough already. I'll just take Julia with me, and you can do whatever you want.
What? Wait a minute.
What now? We're getting divorced, so no complaints, right?
I do have complaints. What about David? Take both kids. It's going to be annoying having your kid around when we have our own child on the way.
I shook my head in disbelief at Ken's shouting. No way. That child isn't mine. It wasn't that Ken had forgotten. Frustrated that things weren't going his way, Ken's face contorted. David is not biologically my child. I had tried to raise him with all the love I could give, but in reality, there is no blood relation. David is the child of Ken's brother and his wife. My brother-in-law and his wife had died in an accident, and Ken and I ended up taking David in. There was no one else for David, so we had no choice. Even then, Ken said, "What's the difference between 1 and 2? Just raise him by yourself," as if his nephew was someone else's problem.
Get real. He's not my kid either. You take him. I don't need them. You're responsible for taking care of them till the end.
As Ken continued to rant, the door behind him opened. David had just returned from his club activities. As he looked curiously at the adults, I pointed to Ray. "David, this lady is going to be your new mom."
Really? Wow, such a cute woman is going to be my mom? Lucky.
Ray must have glared at Ken as David chuckled. "I didn't know you had such a big kid. That's why I'm thinking of having Taylor take him." "That should be no problem, right?" "What? No way, why should I?" "Well, that's..." Ken looked frustrated and pressured by me. Ken was desperately trying to find an excuse to make me take David, and it seemed he had an idea after some thought. "That's right. It's all your fault for cheating first. If you hadn't cheated with the president, I wouldn't have cheated either. So, you should take both children."
Do you realize how nonsensical you're talking? It makes no sense at all. I wasn't even cheating. This is just ridiculous.
Frustrated, I operated my smartphone and showed a photo on the screen to Ken and Ray. "Look at this before you speak. The person next to me is the president you accused me of having an affair with." "No way, this person?" Ken looked at the screen, his face showing disbelief. The person next to me, clearly drunk and having a good time, was undeniably the president of the company I work for. Yes, a female president. The president of my company was a woman. Ken's face flushed with anger.
The president was a woman? Why didn't you say that? You've been deceiving me all this time. This is a joke.
What do you mean by deceiving? I never once said the president was a man. You just assumed that on your own. Your way of thinking is outdated. Nowadays, there are plenty of female presidents.
If you had corrected me when I misunderstood, it would have been better. I tried to explain many times, but you wouldn't listen, would you? Stop blaming everyone else for your mistakes.
As I stood up to Ken's unreasonable anger, the door opened again, and this time Julia, returning from her part-time job, appeared. Julia paused for a moment, confused by the strange atmosphere in the house, but what surprised her was her reaction upon seeing Ray's face. "Ray? Huh? Julia, do you know this person?" "Oh, yes. Ray is a co-worker at my part-time job." "So, your father has been having an affair with her, and they are planning to remarry. She's even pregnant." I said this dismissively, and Julia looked at Ray, who was visibly pale, in disbelief. "But, wasn't Ray dating someone? What are you talking about? She used to say she had a boyfriend who was an aspiring musician, right? She told everyone she was going to be a celebrity's wife. We broke up a long time ago." Ray tried to brush it off with a strange smile, but Julia looked skeptical and pulled out her smartphone to show us a photo. "This is a photo from when we left work 3 days ago. This is you, Ray, right?" In the photo displayed on Julia's phone, Ray was walking arm in arm with a young, flashy-looking man.
Stop that.
Ray's face turned red and she became angry.
That's so low, secretly taking pictures. That's creepy.
This was accidentally captured. I was taking a photo of the cherry blossoms on the street, and when I checked it later, Ray and her boyfriend were in it. Indeed, the photo mainly featured the cherry blossoms, leaving Ray with no choice but to fall silent. Ken, noticing her reaction, became flustered. The night 3 days ago was when Ray stood you up for a date, right? Ray, is it true you have a boyfriend? 3 days ago was when Ken accused me of cheating with the president. That day he said he would be late because of work, but hearing this story now, it makes sense. Ken wasn't really held up at work. 3 days ago, he had told me he would be late because he had a date planned with Ray. Ray had stood him up to meet her boyfriend instead. That's why Ken came home early and made a fuss because there was no dinner ready. I was puzzled but never imagined this was the reason. Who was the real deal, Ken who got stood up, or the aspiring musician boyfriend she was arm in arm with? It was clear as day. Now that it's out, there's no helping it, but of course, I have a boyfriend. I'm young and cute, after all. I wouldn't marry an old man like you if I weren't for the money.
Old man, you say? Were you just playing with my feelings? Kid. Don't mess with me.
Who went after a kid? Are you stupid? You really think you have the charm to catch a young and cute girl like me? You better look in the mirror, old man.
Enough from you.
As Ken and Ray fiercely argued, I ignored them and spoke to Julia. Julia, start packing. We're leaving this house. Understood. Julia nodded deeply and quietly began packing. David just watched Ken and Ray's quarrel with a grin, clearly amused. I packed up with Julia and left the house, so I don't know how Ken and Ray resolved their fight. After that, Ken and I successfully divorced. The president I was accused of having an affair with was indeed a woman, and I am not romantically interested in women, so the suspicion of infidelity was cleared. Ken had to pay me alimony and child support, which gave me some relief. Ray was indeed pregnant. However, after the birth, a DNA test was conducted because the baby looked nothing like Ken, and it was clear that the child wasn't Ken's. Ken met Ray through a dating app. Ray only approached Ken because she wanted money for fun. It was what people call a sugar dating situation. As expected, Ray's child turned out to be her real boyfriend's. The child of her unsuccessful musician boyfriend. Thinking she couldn't support it, Ray lied about it being Ken's child and planned to continue dating her boyfriend while leading a double life. Her plan failed miserably. In the end, Ray ended up returning to the apartment where her unemployed boyfriend lived. Ken, of all people, ended up telling me all about it. Ray's child wasn't mine. So, technically, I wasn't cheating. So, how about we get back together? Ken shamelessly showed up at my parents' house, spouting whatever he pleased. I was flabbergasted. As I hesitated about what to say back, Julia, who was studying, came out and glared at Ken. Can you be any louder? Aren't you embarrassed to come here and make a scene?
What, you brat, don't get smart with me.
Aren't you embarrassed to be deceived by a woman nearly the same age as your own child? I've never thought of you as my father, but just knowing we share the same blood makes me sick. You look like a victim, but you're creepy and borderline criminal trying to buy a girl's affection with money.
You little.
As Ken erupted in anger, the doorbell rang. I went to the door, wondering who it could be, and it was the police. Julia had called them. A police officer had come in response to a report that a man was causing a disturbance at his ex-wife's home. Ken resisted, prompting the police not only to warn him but to take him away. As a result, his workplace found out about the scandal caused by his affair. To let an employee who has done such a thing hang around is a blow to the morale of other employees. Ken was demoted to a less critical position, losing his previous income level. David came to me for help. There's no food at home when I get back. I'm starving, and Dad doesn't prepare anything. The laundry piles up, sometimes I don't have clean clothes to wear, and the room stinks and is dirty. Isn't Mom going to come over and take care of things once in a while? Why would I do that? Don't say that. You're my mom, aren't you? I tried to treat you with love, but nothing changed. I know you refer to me as that woman behind my back. Stop treating me as a mother only when it suits you. Fine, forget it. I won't rely on you anymore. My sister will help me, right? Why would you think that? How many times do you think your tyranny has made me cry? I'm just a poor kid, don't you feel like helping? It's cold for a woman not to care. I do feel sorry that your real parents passed away. But how you live your life after that is up to you. You're old enough to know better. Yet you still continue with this backward way of thinking about men and women, which is foolish. I did everything I could for you. It was your choice not to change. Maybe I failed as a mother. So now, please stay out of Julia's and my life. Let's go back to being strangers. David looked bored and left with a click of his tongue after I spoke. I struggled to heal his heart. Releasing the David I knew since he was a child felt cruel, but no matter how much love I gave, he never changed. There's nothing more I can do for David. After the divorce, as Julia and I settled into our lives, she found the profession she wants to pursue. She's currently working hard studying for university entrance exams. I think I've made her suffer a lot. Between Ken and David, Julia's had a tough life of enduring too much. From now on, her life should be entirely her own. I hope she lives a life that she chooses and is happy with. Julia is diligent and hardworking, so I believe she'll do well in her exams, but still, a parent always worries. Too much encouragement can pressure her. While I have high hopes, I maintain a careful distance, watching over her. From here on, I've decided to protect Julia alone. I'll cover all her university costs. I'm not against scholarships, but I didn't want to burden her further. There's alimony and child support, but I also plan to provide funds for her wedding day, so I'm saving as much as possible and continue to work hard every day. I intend to keep striving so that Julia and I can live happily.